Another characteristic of moments of spontaneous contemplative experience that sheds light on the nature of the path that lies ahead is the light that such experiences shed on the nature of language and what it is to communicate with words. Dan Walsh, who I just mentioned, had a very profound effect on me, as Merton did. And when I left the monastery, I wrote a letter to Dan Walsh, and I asked Dan Walsh, how can I share with people out here that which I had experienced in the monastery, this contemplative awareness and so on. And he wrote back to me and said, you can't do it. He said, you can't communicate it. Nobody can, but it will communicate itself through you if you're convinced in what you say, but it won't be you that's communicating it. It will be communicating itself, and you know the communication will be taking place because there'll be a response in the listener. That something very deep within the listener will know it's being directly spoken to. And it's that resonance, deep calls unto deep. The depths from which the words come in the speaker cause those same depths to resonate in the listener. And this is spiritual communication, heart to heart, ground of the body to ground of the body. I can recall when I was in the novitiate at the monastery, I started reading the collected works of St. John of the Cross. And as I read, I was very aware of the fact that at least 90% of it was going right over my head. Like, what is this guy saying? But I was also aware that as I was reading, there was something that was like hitting me in the chest, pervading me at the level of my body. At some level, I knew what he was talking about. At some level, he was addressing something that was very, very important for me to listen to. And I experienced the reading to be more like listening to music than reading a book, so that the rhythm of the words sustained a listening in which something little by little by little conveyed itself to me. It seems to me then that this helps us to understand the contemplative dimensions of language. It helps us to understand the nature of chanting. In chanting, we deepen our capacity to listen. It helps us understand the nature of liturgy, the nature of the mantra, the nature of the poetic word. What I'm often struck with in psychotherapy, it helps us to understand the nature of the vulnerable word. You can feel it in the room when it's happening. A person's going along talking, and in the very midst of what they're saying, they're surprised by what they've come upon within themselves. And they get very quiet, and they get very open, and when they start to talk, the words come from some deep place inside of them. And they're not even sure yet exactly what they're going to end up saying, but it's a stream of truth that seems to come from the ground of their body. To hear a word like that, or to be present when someone is speaking like that, is to be on holy ground. And it seems to me that so much of Merton's words are these kinds of words. They come from the depth of this experience, and the depths from which they come have the power to awaken those same depths in us as we sit with the depths of his teachings. This does not mean to say that there's not a sound order of conceptual thought in which you could have a study of Thomas Merton. It's just that all such conceptual studies, as important as they may be theologically or philosophically, are not in the modality of communication that the texts themselves are committed to expressing.